Did you know that 9.4% of children ages 2 to 17 are estimated to have ever been diagnosed with ADHD? The same study finds that boys are more likely to have ever been diagnosed with ADHD than girls, 12.9% versus 5.6% respectively. Girls typically are undiagnosed and will often get diagnosed with other conditions such as depression and anxiety, which are symptoms of ADHD when it's not properly supported. Females tend to hide their symptoms better than males and are then often labeled as things such as shy, introverted, or awkward. Hi, my name is Melissa Gasca and this is the first video from my channel, Drifting Thoughts. I'm 31 and I was recently diagnosed with ADHD and OCD. The journey of my diagnosis began when I started seeing a therapist about 5 years ago for severe depression and anxiety. I had pushed off the idea of seeing a therapist for a few years and finally decided to see one after having consistent suicidal ideations, anxiety that was interfering with work and goals, and emotional dysregulation that was affecting my relationships and overall happiness. After finally going in to see a therapist, I was unsurprisingly diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I was recommended medication and consistent therapy, and was told that I should also look into other forms of self-care. I considered the 7 pillars of self-care and would do things like eat healthier, exercise, and meditation. Fast forward 4 to 5 years, and I had tried a few different therapists and taken a variety of different medications. But even after all of this, I still had this empty feeling inside of me. My anxiety and depression started getting worse, and the emotional dysregulation was becoming harder for me to control. It was affecting my ability to maintain relationships with family and friends, and it started to impact the way I was able to work. I would have panic attacks with work or hanging out with people, and I would feel incompetent with my ability to function on a constant basis. Feeling like I couldn't do the things I wanted to do made me feel like I didn't have a purpose in life, and without a purpose, I felt numb. Sometimes this numbness turns into chronic pain throughout my entire body, which I later found out was a chronic pain from fibromyalgia reacting to the overwhelming emotions I was trying to overcome. I was freelancing in the film industry, and I started working with a company called Inclusion Films. This company is run by Joey Travolta. Yes, John Travolta's big brother. They work with adults who have intellectual and developmental disabilities to help them find work in film. As I started to work with the neurodiverse community, I started to feel a great sense of belonging. I had always kind of felt distant from my peers, but with this community, I never felt a sense of criticism or judgment. As much as I loved working in the film industry and still want to pursue it, I gravitated towards working with adults in the disability community to be more involved with film. I was offered a position with a nonprofit company and thought this would be a great way to kickstart my personal goals by having a more consistent schedule. I thought these things might help my anxiety and depression, considering they would allow me to have more time to achieve my personal goals. After working a consistent job for a few years, I could still feel the crippling anxiety and depression roam over. At the beginning of COVID, like so many others, I started working from home, and I felt like this is when I really started to notice my executive function spiral. Things like staying on track with work and taking care of myself started becoming much more strenuous. I had one therapist that I was seeing for about a year, and after not really seeing much of an improvement, I decided to try a new therapist and psychiatrist out. I met with a new therapist who seemed much more genuine, along with more so reciprocated what I would express. After really going through my history, triggers, and digging deep, she diagnosed me with inattentive ADHD. As a therapist who also has ADHD, she was able to quickly realize my condition. After getting to know me even more, she was also able to tell that I formed OCD as a way to cope with my ADHD. After doing a ton of research, I was able to connect so many dots dating back to when I was in middle school. ADHD has definitely affected me my entire life, with school, relationships, work, and the list goes on. It's what caused my extreme anxiety, which would make me feel fearful and unmotivated to do the things that I wanted, which would always lead to chronic depression. Learning this was a huge epiphany for me, as I finally felt like I had an understanding of who I was. Since middle school, I always felt so detached from my peers, and I didn't understand how school and making friends seemed so easy for most. My parents assumed that I wasn't interested in school, and they figured I was just being a bad kid. I did well when I was really interested and attentive in something, but if not, my mind would typically just drift away. I loved to learn, but when I didn't do well in certain classes that didn't catch my interest enough, this would make me feel like I was stupid and incompetent. Moving forward to after high school, I tried my best to move on and attempt to create goals for myself as an adult. I worked and tried to go back to college, but I would still run into issues of extreme procrastination, daydreaming, and emotional dysregulation that would get in the way of my studies. So, now I know what this mystery had been all along. I feel like now I have this new sense of identity. Some people think that things like ADHD and OCD are made-up conditions that people make up as an excuse for their behavior. But I guarantee it is a very real challenge. Now that I'm aware of how my brain works, I have been becoming more aware of why I've had particular challenges in my life, along with new ones that were formed as an outcome for the lack of support I was given. With my ADHD, I've had to encounter poor executive function, time blindness, procrastination, daydreaming, emotional dysregulation, impulsivity, and the need to fulfill my lack of dopamine by doing things like drugs, compulsive spending, and very engaging activities. Sometimes it feels like I have so many tabs open in my brain and my mind becomes restless so quickly. I don't know how many times I forgot my keys, lost my phone, lost my mind. Then along came OCD, which would ultimately feed off of my ADHD. My OCD was a way for me to cope with keeping my ADHD on track. I started creating lists, repeating scripts in my head, obsessively cleaning, having rituals, stimming, picking, and feeling like everything had to be a certain way before I attempted to do anything productive. All of this takes hours out of my day, which on top of everything else that I need to stay on top of as an adult, makes it incredibly difficult for me to keep up, let alone do things for myself. I'm currently at the beginning of my journey with having this new self-actualization and overcoming how to cope with life while also pursuing my goals and dreams. I wanted to create this not only to overcome my own challenges, but also for anyone out there in the ether that might be going through the same thing. If you happen to have a similar story, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. If there's any topics or content you guys are interested in, I would love to get feedback on things you would like to see in the future. I have a lot of other ideas for videos dealing with mental health conditions in care, the disability community, diversity and inclusivity in film, flat earth theory, just kidding, and the list goes on. This video also consisted of neurodiverse talent throughout writing, production, acting, and editing, and will always consist of a diverse group of helping hands in all of my videos. This is incredibly important to this channel so that we can help promote inclusion and acceptance in the entertainment industry, because everyone deserves a chance to express themselves. Our goal with this channel is to release at least one video a month, and if we can gain more support, we hope to release videos more frequently. If you would like to support us, please delicately press that like and subscribe button, and if you know anyone else that might be going through the same thing or would appreciate what our team is doing, please share this video. Just remember, every thought is a good thought, even the drifting ones. Thank you.